What do I and the longest-running incarnation of the X-Men have in common?
Mutant.
No.
Fairly gay.
Well, both of these things you have said are true. But the correct answer is, I am uncanny.
Ah.
My next question. Why do I have 2 handfuls of baked beans?
Because you're uncanny?
Because I'm uncanny, Laura. Why am I languishing at the bottom of this valley with a bunch of David Cage's characters?
Because
you're uncanny.
Uncanny! Thank you very much. To demonstrate just how canny I'm not, I have to start today's pre-video game banter section with heavy video game related talk.
Oh.
I know. This is not unprecedented, but it is uncanny. And I'm going to show you how and why I have been delighted by this for a number of reasons. Because A, it was incredibly prescient, and B, both things that happened benefit me. So, last week, Podquisition, I talked about Onimusha 2.
You did?
Yeah.
I did. I downloaded it for Stephanie's ROM condo, which we got that coming up. And I talked about how there was a remaster of the first one. There wasn't one of this one, but there's an HD texture pack. And, wouldn't it be lovely? All of that. Right? And they only bloody went and announced one the other day. A remaster of Onimusha 2. Mere days after I download it and start, talking about it, we get one. And that's about half of the things that I add on my list of, weird, uncanny predictions with the industry have been Capcom related before. There was one to do with Resident Evil where I said, we're about due Resident Evil re-releasing on this system. And it did, a day later. So that was prescient. During that Onimusha 2 discussion, I talked about a pair of Onimusha 2 action figures I had once.
Mm-hmm.
That I, if y'all didn't listen last week, when I worked at Destructoid years and years, and we're talking over 15 years ago, I had these Onimusha 2 action figures, and I wasn't going to use them, and I figured someone else would find a better use for them, so I'll give them away. It wasn't for anything, it was just a comment-based contest, we'll pick you at random or whatever, and I'll send them along. And then ADHD happened, and I never did. But I always told myself I would, so I carried those 2 action figures, fully boxed, around with me for well over a decade. They followed me from the UK to America, to Mississippi, to multiple places in Mississippi, and then sort of petered out, or so I thought.
No.
It turns out they'd never actually left for America with me.
Oh my god!
And Faye had been moving some stuff over to mine because, they live here full time now, and found a box that I had gotten from my brother after I moved back to the UK. That was at Fees, so they brought it back. And there's all sorts of neat stuff in there. There's press materials for Edge of Twilight, a long-forgotten game that has a tragic history that I should, do a video on sometime or something. Bunch of, Koei, load of Tokyo Game Show 2008 stuff. And in that box, to my great delight, were 2 boxed Onimusha action figures. I would be looking at them right now, but they're not behind me like they were. Maybe I've lost them for another 15 years.
So what you're about to announce is that we're having a contest for the best comment on them.
We've got a giveaway, yes, the uncanniest Podquisition comment. No, you see, here's the thing. I still feel the weight of my sin on my shoulders. There is no way I would be able to track down who it was. And there's no way, even if it was the right person, they'd be able to prove it.
Yep.
So I wouldn't feel comfortable because, I'm actually surprised I've not had... Like, Laura's come the closest, still, to claiming to be that person.
No one's chanced it yet.
No. And no one who tries will. Because this isn't a Cinderella situation. I can't jam their foot in the box and see if it fits, folks. So, I cannot give them away. I do not consider them mine. They will remain in their box. I was looking at them and I'm like, they could look good. My little tat shelf on my desk that I sort of grab things from during live streams to show off.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, no, I can't. I can't unbox these. They're not mine. I am merely holding on to them for someone else forever. Which also means I won't be able to bequeath them. They're not mine to bequeath, folks. I will be buried.
So they're just going to live.
I will be buried with them, and
how's about this, Steph?
Yeah.
Every month that goes by where you have not been tracked down by the original commenter, I will get a little more elaborate in my insistence that I was that commenter, and I will build up a slightly more elaborate backstory as to how I was that commenter. And hopefully, month by month, little by little, as the chances of them hearing about it and responding dwindle, the amount of effort I've put into the lie increases, maybe we'll cross a tipping point and you'll feel safe handing them off.
Like a cookie
Everybody loves a long
situation.
con.
Yeah.
It would be the getting a free toy equivalent of me being an old woman and you telling me that you're my dead daughter and me kind of knowing it's not true, but out of grief and loneliness, I accept you anyway. I like that. There's a romance to that, a poetry to that. I like that.
It's been 8 weeks, so give me another 3 weeks, and I'll work on what my phase 1 of escalating this is going to be.
I like that, and my hope is that when they are handed off to you, you are gripped by a sense of guilt and shame, as I have been.
This is the problem. I know I will be.
Yeah,
I know. I will. I will physically feel the curse pass over to me.
and I feel at that point it's going to be the start, and I've always wanted to be able to start one of these of an order. The order of the 2 random Onimusha 2 action figures, what some dumb broad didn't send off in the 2000s.
I do love the idea of being the second step in the passing around of a cursed object that just goes through the ages.
The esoteric order of Daigonimusha. I like that. Yeah, because then, many years from now, you will hand them off to someone, just like take these, and maybe you're on your deathbed and you do that thing that old people do with coins. You press it into their hands and then try and wrap their hands round it, but it's too big. It's not a fucking coin, Laura. And they're like, ow, it's hurting me. It's cutting on the side of the blister package. And you're like, take this, my child.
And the thing is, it's only going to take a generation or 2 or 3 before whoever it was that did the comment is dead. And no one on the planet will know who the commenter was. And at that point, it will be impossible for it to make its way to its owner.
That is true.
But that will not stop it from changing hands and the guilt travelling with it.
It will take less than a generation for people to forget Onimusha exists again. So...
That's true. And at that point, honestly, I think the mystery person only grows in power.
Oh, yeah.
Because at that point, they will become like mythologized. They will become a mythical figure.
Well, it can become a messianic tale of the day that the one comes to claim their Onimusha action figure.
Yeah!
It's going to be a real, whoever comes and claims the Onimusha action figure becomes Queen of England or whatever situation.
You know what? Could be.
There are worse ways to operate a government, as we can see.
The sword in the Stonemusha.
Welcome to Podquisition.
Welcome! The Uncanny podcast that's recorded on a Wednesday.
We sometimes talk about video games here. Sometimes we've even played those video games.
Mm-hmm.
I've played too many of them this week.
Well, then you should start. I've only played a couple of things. Only one I have anything really to say about.
I'm going to start with the one that I have the most to say about. The one that, like, I got really into this past weekend, because there was a beta going on for it over the weekend. I've played about 6 or 7 hours of Elden Ring Nightreign. And it's really fucking interesting.
Yeah, what you described to me, I went from not really following it too much because I was still sad about the fire giant in Elden Ring stymieing my progress and me not being able to co-op for it. And well, no, just that. And then you described it and I'm like, wait a minute, this is everything that I would want.
The one sentence pitch is it's Elden Ring, but it's Fortnite. And that doesn't really do it justice, because it's... What if you took Elden Ring and you gave it like a turbo mode? You turned up the speed and the pacing of everything. Your sprint runs at like twice the speed it normally would and doesn't use up stamina when you're just running around the overworld. We turned off fall damage. We gave you the ability to like fucking parkour up walls and shit. Nothing is getting in your way. Go, go, go. We stripped away a lot of the stopping and methodically thinking about every individual, where do I put this level in my complicated spread of stats? Nah, you start with, like, one of a selection of default starting characters, and when you go to level up, it's one thing that you level up, your level. You just, you take your souls, you get to a bonfire, and just go, mash the button until it says I've spent almost my levels. Any character that you start with can use basically any weapon, pretty much without any kind of penalty. There's no equip load. There's no, like, you picked up too many heavy things and now you've got the slow roll. You've got a limited number of slots, so you're going to be holding a certain number of things at a time. But other than that, just grab what the fuck you want. And all of this is in service of multiplayer. Like, very much it is forced to be about multiplayer Elden Ring. The idea is you're dropped into this world with with 2 other people. You're in a squad of 3. You need to stick together because you are going up against bosses while completely underleveled and relying on the fact that there are 3 of you to, like, to draw aggro. That's how you're surviving early on, is there's distractions. There's people that can draw aggro while you get some hits in for free, being a bit cheeky. It's the way that it plays when you summon in NPCs and use the Mimic tier, it's that as the default mode. And all of this is sort of built around, much like something like Fortnite, there is a circle that is closing in, forcing you towards, at the end of each day, a big boss you're going to fight. So you can split up. You don't want to split up. Because if you get knocked down, you want to be near your friends so you can run and smack them with a sword to get them back up. You heal them by fucking hitting them with your weapons to avoid them losing their souls or anything. It's just... You know how playing something like Elden Ring is very specifically about, like, take your time, do your pacing, don't go in for any attacks that, like, you aren't certain you've got a safe opening for? This just goes, no, there's no time for that. Get in, get fighting stuff, trust people to have your back. Turbo mode, Elden Ring.
It
and
sounds
it's really damn fun.
It sounds as it's the kind of thing that, since we have the alternative experience, that's already there. That's good. Going the complete other way with an alternative, with a spin-off, is perfect. It sounds like a fantastic counterpart. And counter, I guess, to the original, like turning those elements on their head. And provided they make them work, which, from the sounds of it, they have, I am so on board with that.
I had such a good time with this. It's really scratching an itch for, I want to play like an hour or so of Elden Ring, and I don't want to get stressed about if I hit... So, like, you with the fire giant, like, your stumbling block where you're like, fuck, I can't get past this, and I can't find anyone to summon with, and it feels like my game just hit a brick wall and I couldn't keep going. Put that aside, it's like, no, we're going to drop you into an open world where it doesn't matter what things you fight, all it matters is that you're fighting something and getting levels. If there's a particular boss that's a stumbling block for you, A, you're always going to have people to help you with it, and B, you might not fight it every run because it's randomized what you're coming up against. It's only ever at most going to take you like 45 minutes to an hour to do a run if you get the whole way through. Just sort of jump in and get right to the meat of what makes these games fun. Like, if you do a full run of this, at most you're gonna hit, like, I've not seen anyone go past level 15, so it's just like, you're getting a limited number of levels, you're feeling significantly more powerful every time you level up, it's speeding up that progression curve of the game, and letting you get, like, a really condensed burst of the feeling of playing Elden Ring. Stuff I really like about it. I really like the default characters they have as your sort of starting classes. There was the Wilder, which, like, I didn't play a huge amount of. Their whole deal was just, they are your generic sword and shield warrior. Yeah, they were fine. They were very easy to play. They weren't the one that was most interesting to me. The ones I found really interesting, there is the Guardian, who is like this sort of birdman in armor with a big shield and a big sort of polearm attack, who can do things like toss enemies into the air for a few seconds to give your party some breathing room, can leap up into the air and do a sort of targeted strike down on them from above. There's a cool close-range sort of assassin character who has really good support skills. This is one of my favourites. Every 7 seconds your cooldown for this will finish, so you can use it really, really regularly, and it will replay the last second and a half of party damage to enemies that have taken damage. So if one of your party members has like done a big charged, like done their big ultimate charged attack and dealt a huge chunk of damage and done bleed damage on top of that, you can make that damage happen again by just replaying the last second and a half of damage that happened.
I love that idea. I love it.
That's such a fucking cool support skill. It's less about you dealing damage and you watching the bar and going, a big chunk just went, hit my ult. They can also make themselves and the party invisible, so that they are literally undetectable by the boss for I would say like a good 10 seconds, so that you have a chance to revive your teammates, do some attacks on the boss. Neither of those stops you being invisible. Just give you some nice breathing room. There is a spellcaster whose whole deal is dealing different kinds of magic damage, and you sort of reabsorb that the kinds of damage you've dealt as different coloured orbs, and those will change the spells you start doing. And they're a very complicated character, but they're sort of like, it's almost like you're very slowly putting in an input string from a fighting game to be like, I absorbed some red, some blue, and some green damage, I'll do this, it'll do this spell now. If I absorb all red damage types, I'll do this kind of spell. Really big damage potential ceiling on them.
Yeah.
They also have an ability that's like their big ultimate. Every time I hit an enemy, everyone in the party gets health and FP back for like a good chunk of time.
That's good.
And like, it's all these nice little support things that are just designed to keep you like giving your friends breathing room, helping amplify what they've done well, protecting them while you get them back up on their feet, and keeping them healthy. It's all about being a little team.
You know what I really like about it? It could have been easy for them to just slap a bunch of generic but factory standard, we've seen them all before, classes onto these things. Do a roguelite, like a roguelitey type thing with the basic mechanics of the base game, and not make any real effort to have these disparate elements blend together, and just try and make old systems work together in a kind of awkward, mashed up way. But they didn't do what Dynasty Warriors Abyss did. They did their own thing, and they came up with these builds that feel thematic to Elden Ring and what they do, while fitting this new format. And again, they could have just been healer, okay, you've got some support, okay, you've got some heal spells, but shit like that replicating damage, and my brain keeps coming back to that. It sounds it's so clever.
It's such a fun idea, and I love that it's on such a quick cooldown that you are meant to be using it really frequently. And it just changes the way you think about your teammates in the battle. Like, you can go, I don't have to be the big damage dealer. I can really emphasize when you do great damage. But yeah, all of this is wrapped up in, you drop into a match, the circle shrinks, and like, when it eventually reaches its center, you've got like a 3-day cycle. So the first day, you get shepherded into a place and you fight a boss. If you survive, the map opens back up, but then circles back toward another point. If you beat both of those, you go to a special zone that's just an arena for the final boss, and from what I can tell, the day 3 bosses will be bosses that have never appeared in the Souls series before. So, like, day 1 and 2, you might be fighting Elden Ring or Dark Souls bosses, and then you get to day 3, and it'll be like, here is a ridiculously hard original boss designed specifically to be hard to fight in multiplayer. The example in the beta was this Cerberus with 3 heads, and then every now and then it would split itself into being 3 individual dogs, and you'd have to fight them one-on-one for a bit before they came back to being 3-headed, and you could 3-on-1 them again. And, like, that's a boss designed around doing a 3-player party. That's a really cool gimmick. Yeah, I played as much of this as I could during the beta weekend, and it instantly shot up to being something I want to play more of. It was really nice jumping into a Souls game that felt so unapologetic about the fact that it's like, no, be a team, stick together, your skills are designed to help each other, be there for each other and you might survive this. And just get these little condensed hour-long bursts of Souls gameplay. I'm really into it.
I wish I'd been able to speak to it in the video I did on Monday, where I talked about, how hardcore gamers who are, who solo every boss and say co-oping or using magic or weapons they've decided are OP are cheating. And then you messaged me while you were subtitling it and said, like, Nightreign seems like a direct answer to that, like From Software making it so that, here's the entire point of the game. You can't...
It really did feel like a direct answer to what you wanted to see more out of how people think about that series.
Yeah, well, not necessarily. Basically, well, I suppose that is true. What I want them to see, I want them to appreciate, certainly, that using the features a game literally gives you isn't cheating, and denying yourself those tools is a challenge run.
And that's what I mean, is this sort of goes, these features are in here because the game developer likes them, use them.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like a don't be afraid to enjoy these games as multiplayer experiences statement of a game.
And I would not be surprised if that genuinely was a motivation, because I think From Software does want people to use co-op. As far back as Demon's Souls, those games have been designed to be a community-based thing in unique and often indirect ways. When Demon's Souls first came out, I wrote an article, I penned a little essay that called it, at the time, somewhat hyperbolically, I think I called it like the ultimate multiplayer experience. And I wasn't talking about co-op, I was talking about what the white phantoms you see while you play, showing you the other guys like around you, other players. And the messages and the bloodstains, all that stuff that we just sort of take for granted and don't focus on at all these days, I still think is one of the most important elements of the entire heart of that series.
It was the only format of multiplayer that I had seen and thought, this is something that I want to engage with.
Yeah.
The description of this mode for Elden Ring, it sounds great. It sounds like what I would want, something light and quick that I could get in. I'm not interested in the multiplayer. Like, that's the sticking point for me, but it's because I'm not interested in playing games with other people. It's not,
For what it's worth, my understanding is that it wasn't available in the beta, but my understanding is you will be able to play it single player and it will summon in NPC, offline NPCs to be your 2 other players.
Great. Yeah.
My understanding is that is an option at launch.
Just you watch a bunch of Get Gooders say that the only way to play it is to solo it. And can you do it legit solo, or will the NPCs come in?
So I don't know the function of this for certain, but my understanding is that you can't do it actually solo.
Right.
The only way you could do that is if you started a match with other online people and both of them dropped out.
Ah. that the one real way to play it then.
It's just by going through a convoluted series of events to ensure that you're the only one playing and then do it. Yeah, that sounds like the right way to me.
But let's face it, that's what they want. They want to be the only ones ever playing these games.
Yeah, it was honestly such a nice experience. And that was not the word I thought I would have for multiplayer Elden Ring. Before we finish, there's a couple of other just like really nice little mechanics in it that I think are worth a shout very quickly. One of them, basically every weapon that you find in the game has secondary abilities that will work whether you're wielding it or not. So you're encouraged to pick up shit even if you're not gonna actually get rid of your primary weapon, because it might bestow on you like additional HP recovery or additional chance of inflicting bleed or whatever just by having it in your pockets. So you're encouraged to like pick up and look at stuff even if you really like the weapon you're already using. I really like that defeating bosses specifically gives you like a Hades style boons that tend to be like late game legendary weapons or special things like, hey, if you walk rather than running, raining arrows of light will fall down from the sky.
Cheats.
Or shit like that, where it's like there's one that I got that was like, I had glowing swords that would automatically fire at nearby enemies and a big glowing sword that would sometimes just slash at nearby enemies as a reward for, I think, completing the first day. And I was like, oh, I just have... That doesn't take up any of my slots. That's just a thing about me now, is that laser swords fight people for me. It does fun little goofy shit like that sometimes. It's just like, hey, we want you to feel powerful, and then we're gonna kick your ass. But we're gonna give you all the tools to feel powerful first. And I'm like, yeah,
that sounds
like that's
such
great.
A laugh. Like I said earlier, like the multiplayer I really praise is the non-co-op stuff, but at the same time, co-op is like possibly my favorite thing when it comes to the gameplay side of it. Like, I don't play those games ever to be challenged. They are challenging, sure, but any element of challenge, the function that challenge has to me is to feed the thing I actually like these games for, which is the atmosphere. I like exploring these worlds, and if the challenge makes those worlds scarier or whatever, cool. But when it comes to the mechanical side of it, I have always, wherever there was a possibility of doing so, always aligned myself with the Sun Bros. I have always gone in for co-op. And I love summoning for my own stuff. I have fun. And even more, I love being summoned for people to help them get through a boss, especially if it's a boss I struggled with. So a game like this does sound particularly up my alley.
It really gripped me. But yeah, what about you both? What have you been playing this week?
I really only played one significant thing, and that is a game about digging a hole. Have you heard about this?
I saw you streaming some of this.
Yeah.
I've not played it, but I've seen it floating around.
Yeah, it's what's on the tin. It's a game about digging a hole. It's kind of got a fascinating story. This is something thrown together by the art director, I think, on Solarpunk in like 2 weeks. They just got a bug in them to do it or something. And it's a game where you have purchased a very, very cheap house based on an advertisement that promises that there is money buried in the backyard that you'll get rich from. And you have a little shovel, and you go out, and there's a little big X in the backyard indicating where you should start digging. And you just start digging little holes. And you have a shovel that is battery-powered to do this. But if the battery runs out, the battery will explode. So you have to keep it charged by selling resources that you find while digging in your backyard. Starts with stones, then coal, and progresses on to more valuable ores as you go along. You are limited by your inventory, but you can purchase upgrades for that as well. And the whole gameplay loop is just dig a little bit deeper or wider, find resources until you're full up or your battery is low, go back, dump, sell, upgrade, back in the hole. And eventually you get a drill that's just like, it's like vacuuming dirt almost. It's really neat. It just sweeps across, and it's very satisfying to do this digging. It is a super chill, relaxed time up until the end of the game, where like so many of these weird little indie games, it suddenly becomes a stealth thing. I don't know why they all do that, but everybody seems to do that. But it's very light. It's a few hours. It's meditative. It's $5. I'm glad I played it. There's not much to it, I will be honest. But in terms of it being a neat little thing that someone made, and was like for the story, I think it's worth playing for the story of somebody made this in 2 weeks. Isn't that funny? They had been experimenting in Solarpunk with voxel stuff, and this was just sort of abandoned and left by the wayside. The art director picked it up, fiddled with it, and made this game. It's light, it's fun, but it's nothing extraordinarily special. But the gag, a game about just the game can sell on the title alone, and I kind of respect that, because it tells you everything that it needs to do. It will make you curious about what exactly it is, and then you're in and out once the joke is it's really like the ideal kind of joke game type deal, and I'm into that. So, yeah, a game about digging a hole.
That sounds like a very you game. Just
Yeah.
the title alone, I'm like, that might as well be called Conrad Streamers.
Yes, yeah. I like a game that tells you exactly what it is and makes no bones and just sets you off on it. Yeah. As little pretense as possible.
Lovely stuff.
Nice. What about you, Steph? What have you been playing?
I'll tell you what I haven't been playing.
Yeah.
So, I realised I needed to get some footage for Zilla. And it was last minute. I've got ADHD. Sunday night, video up on Monday. I'm like, I haven't gotten around to playing Shadow of the Erd Tree. I will spend money on that. I've not played it yet. I got it. I re-downloaded Elden Ring. I thought about the fire giant for a moment, got angry, and then went to look up how to engage with the thing I just spent my money on. Oh, I never did beat that boss that you've got to beat, Mog. Oh, it says here he's one of the hardest bosses in the game. Let me just have a quick go on the controls. Oh, I've forgotten how to play it. I've been mainlining Dynasty Warriors for the past 3 weeks. I am trying to hack and slash this, and this controller's got really bad drift. I don't think I'm getting across that snowfield to get to the boss. I have not gotten across that snowfield.
Yeah, it's a rough experience to jump back into. You know what I might recommend? And this is what I did when Shadow of the Erd Tree came out. I started a fresh save, and I just played from the beginning, and I googled what's the quickest way for me to get from the start of the game to Shadow of the Erd Tree. And there is a bit of a workaround you can do to get there quicker, avoiding most of the bosses along the way.
I did hear there were 2 ways to get there.
Yeah, there's one that involves you get a key from someone. It's been a while since I did it, but you get a key from somewhere and it lets you go through a teleporter and basically go straight to Mog. Yeah, I jumped back in and I realised I didn't remember any of what I was fucking doing,
tough,
and was dropped into the middle of the game where it was not a place for me to learn how to play again.
Yeah, and I'm not thrilled. Like, I feel like we really should have a discussion about the way From Software does its DLC, because it's honestly not on. It's honestly not cool to do that. To take not inconsiderable amounts of money and then be like, here are the hoops you've got to jump through that we're not even going to tell you in game. Like, we're just going to rely on the fact the internet exists. So it's going to be obtuse. And if you can't fight that boss, if you get stuck, you've wasted your money. And I think that's kind of not cool. I could put in all of the time to get good again, because I was pretty decent at the game. Like the fire giant as well. If I bash my head against it, I'd figure it. But I don't have the time or the patience right now. And then the inability I'm finding to summon is not helping. So I had considered what you've suggested. Maybe I'll just start again. And then I remembered things like the dungeon with those giant chariot traps and the dual Crucible Knight boss. And I'm like, these are things I swore I'd never do again. I don't know if I can go through some of that game a second time. I love that game. I don't know if I want to play it twice. It's like Requiem for a Dream in that sense. Glad I watched that film. We'll never watch it twice.
I love that movie. I would love that movie.
It's a heck of a film.
Yeah.
Heck of a film.
I was a big Aronofsky fan back when Pi came out.
Ah.
I really loved that movie. And Requiem was... Requiem for a Dream was so good that it got me to read more Hubert Selby Jr. And let me tell you, the book that Aronofsky wanted to adapt by Selby before he settled on Requiem for a Dream, Last Exit to Brooklyn, Jesus fucking Christ. Like, holy...
That good?
Yeah, it's really good. It's a very interesting portrait of America during Union struggles, and there's a trans character in there that I do wonder how that reads now that I've become more educated on the subject some, like, decades after reading it. I still have it on my shelf. I'm going to read that again. Yeah, I'm curious now. But Selby was a really, really good writer, and Last Exit to Brooklyn was intense and interesting at the very least. Yeah, anyway, sorry.
Nice. Well, I'll tell you what is not intense and interesting. The game I did spend a chunk of time with this week, and I know Laura's played it as well. I don't think I can bring myself to, because I am exhausted today, and I do not want to get animated about it. Dynasty Warriors Abyss. Now look, I respect that there are people that like it. I love Ribena as well. And I'm drinking some now. I drink it all the time. Bit of delicious purple drink with all the vitamin D a growing girl could need. Big fan of it. I don't need a game drowning in it. Laura, you have played it as well.
Yeah.
Am I wrong in thinking that the amount of AoE attacks, and I'm saying this game is Dynasty Warriors because the templates telegraphing AoE attacks are purple, and there are so many of them. The floor is purple. It's just purple. You will dodge an AoE attack right into another one. They had to change the way the game works. Because it's Dynasty Warriors controls. Because they just slapped it into a Hades-like and was like, in typical Omega Force fashion, thought, yeah, that's good enough. So they had to... No other Dynasty Warriors has it, so that if you dodge halfway through a combo string, you will pick up that string where you left off when you start attacking again. But if they didn't do that in this, it would be impossible to do the second half of any character's moveset. You have to dodge that much. This game thought there was too much getting in the way of AoEs in Hades. And I don't mean getting in the way of the action. It's not just... They didn't just cut like all the interesting story stuff and all the downtime stuff, as you implied when I was talking about it on stream, Conrad. I'm talking about the combat as well. They're like, yeah, Hades has too much of everything that isn't an AoE-related act. What if we just did that? What if we built an entire game around dodging area of effect attacks? And then we gave the player a cooldown on their dodge.
Yeah, here's my takeaway from having played some of it. There is no world in which I would ever be playing this and not instead wishing I was playing literally any other entry in this genre.
Yeah.
And I mean that. I know it sounds harsh, There are parts of this that don't feel bad, per se. They feel fine, they feel adequate, they feel well enough made. This has none of the character or personality or interesting uniqueness of any other entry in this genre. I'm playing through it going, I pick up my equivalent of Hades boons, and none of them feel like they're fundamentally changing what my character's doing. Certainly not in any way that feels big and dramatic, and, like, committing to a boon has, like, fundamentally changed my playstyle.
They mostly just make number go up.
Yeah, and, like, not even in ways where it's like, oh, I picked an electric one, now I get to see, like, lightning bounce around the screen in a way that's cool. Like, none of it looks like I'm doing anything different. And there's too many enemies all the time, meaning that, like, in something like Hades, I could see an enemy type do an attack on its own and go, cool, I've now internalized what kind of attack that enemy does. But they just throw so much nonsense enemies on screen that, like, I'm seeing purple AoEs happen and dodging because don't stand in the purple, not because, like, I recognised, oh, it's that enemy doing that attack that enemy does.
Because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who's doing what, because the entire game is AoE dodging the game.
Everything is too chaotic to do anything but reactively respond to I'm stood on purple.
Yeah. The enemy is the colour purple. It's not the enemies, because you're not avoiding the enemies. You're avoiding the purple on the floor. The floor is lava.
Yeah.
Except for the fact that because there are lots of enemy character models on screen, they're all stood on the purple, making it harder to see. And that's before we get into characters like Nobunaga or Sima Yi, whose attacks are area of effect attacks that leave purple marks on the fucking floor.
Yep. And, like, look, there's moments of this where I had, you know, early on where I was like, oh, I like that some of these attacks are big and anime-ish, and that, you know, there were moments where I almost thought I was going to like it, and then it very clearly became, oh, it's a screen full of stuff that poses me no threat, that's purely there to stop me from clearly seeing where the purple is I have to not stand in. Like, I'm not even going to say I'd rather be playing Hades. Of course I'd rather be playing Hades. It's, like, the tip top of the genre. But, like, a couple of months ago I was playing that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle Hades, like. I would infinitely rather be playing that than this.
Yeah.
Like, that had personality. It had character to it. It had interesting narrative. It had power-ups that felt substantial. It had things that drew me along through it rather than just people everywhere dodge the purple, people everywhere dodge the purple.
Yeah. The other issue is, it is that consistently, beginning to end, with nothing really to do in between. There's no sense of escalation during a run. There is, starts off at fever pitch, has a big spike, followed by another big spike very quickly after that, so it's at double fever pitch, and that's the rest of the run. So even if you get to a point where there's lots of colours on screen and you're doing big number go up damage, and you feel like, hey, this might be fun, now that I'm OP, I still can't see anything and it doesn't matter what's happening, but hey, lots of numbers ticking up like a pinball machine. But by that point, I'm exhausted, because I've been doing nothing but dodging, not being able to enjoy it as a hack and slash, because the other systems the game has are undermined by the AoEs. They have this, what could be a really cool gimmick. You take summonable officers, take other warriors' characters, and attach them to your attacks. They're equipped to the charge attacks you do by hitting a strong attack at the end of a given sequence of normal attacks. And all it does is you press the strong attack button one more time, or you hold it, because this game is clearly designed for mobile phones first. You hit the attack one more time, and the officer equipped to that charge attack appears and does a big flashy attack of their own. That's cool. The problem is the game is constantly interrupting your attack strings. And then, because it doesn't work this way in any other game, it's unintuitive, you have to keep track of where you were in your attack combo, so you pick it up where you left off. And that throws me out of sync with what's happening so many times, because my muscle memory is used to, if I dodge, I start again from attack 1.
Mm-hmm.
And all the officers summonable are on cooldown. Half the time I keep accidentally trying to summon one that's still on a cooldown. And then you get the Samurai Warriors characters, who are fucked in two different ways by this system. They're fucked because their charge attacks are multi-stage. You keep hitting the charge attack, and they keep doing more. And then at the end of that string, they'll do a summon. So it takes them inherently longer to summon an officer. And their attacks are a lot more elaborate. They always have been. Their charge attacks are always longer, more elaborate, more animated than the Dynasty Warriors ones. That can send some of them zipping around the screen. Hard to control, and into a fucking AoE. On top of that, these are ones culled from the Samurai Warriors 4 era of games, which means not only do you do strings of normal to strong attacks, they have strings of strong to normal attacks. And if you're playing a game where you have to keep dodging, picking up where you left off, and already getting confused by that, having it go both ways. So it's like, okay, I was pressing square and now I'm pressing triangle. Wait a minute, I've been pressing triangle several times. Now I've got to hit square to do the attack I was going to press triangle to. Do you see how it doesn't work? Do you see how it's confusing? Because no one at Omega Force does. Omega Force does this. This goes back to their very first ever fucking stumblings with the series. Every time, and this has happened with 3, it's happened with 4, it's happened with Samurai and Dynasty Warriors, they have all sorts of little clever ideas that they throw in to spice up the series. But Omega Force seems to think that every single game mechanic that has ever been invented is a Lego brick, and it can just be stacked onto the Lego bricks they already have, when that's not the case. They're all custom parts, and you have to make space for them. You have to carve bits off, glue bits on. You have to make all of your different systems work together. Omega Force never does that. They say, here's the structure of a Warriors game. We will pick it up and we will drop it into this soup of other ideas and just assume it works out. And this game, perhaps more than any other, typifies that problem, because no one seemed to ask if it works. Is it not inherently unfair on the Samurai Warriors characters that these summons occur at the end of strings that they have a harder time getting to? Does it not strike us as strange that we had to break our own combo system to account for these AoEs? They never ask if it works. They just do it thoughtlessly and inelegantly, and it is frustrating as fuck.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've got a couple of other things that I played this week that I'll chat about. Some of them can probably wait for later, but I want to talk in quick about a couple of them. There's a really promising demo on Steam that I want to shout out that I think is worth checking out. The demo doesn't have very much content to it, but it's put the game on my radar quite somewhat. It's called Ruthie and the Riverside. Zilla may have put it best when they said the other day, they called it Paper Banjo-Kazooie. You're playing just this cuddly little bear. Paper Mario art style in a 3D world. It's a 3D platformer, much like your sort of Mario 64, where you're jumping into paintings, collecting stars, unlocking more doors kind of game. It has a gimmick to it, and the gimmick is fascinating. You can absorb a material from somewhere in the world, and then you have a limited amount of time to apply that material to something else in the world. So, you find a wooden barrel, you absorb the wood from it, you go find, I don't know, some metal boxes that you can't break through otherwise. Now you've turned them into wooden boxes, you can punch through them. There's a waterfall, you don't know how to get to the top of it, you find some vines, you absorb the vines, you apply them to the waterfall, it's now made of vines rather than water, you climb up the vines, you get up the top. Its whole little gimmick is just taking materials from the world and applying them to other things not too far away, because there's a time limit, which, means that the answer's never going to be that far away from you. and just apply them to other things in the world. And it's a really fun little gimmick that plays really nicely. A 2D character in a 3D platformer I thought would feel weird, controls really damn nicely.
Nice.
I like that the level design, unlike something like Mario 64 where you jump in and it's like, you're jumping into this level and you're doing this one objective, jump back out, jump back in, you're doing a new objective. It's almost like a linear 3D platforming level, but with side stuff hidden along the way. So if you just get to the end of the level, you'll get a star, but along the way there might be little side paths and hidden challenges and things hidden away that you're doing to get extra stars along the way to the end. It's a really fun demo. It's very promising. It's got me keeping my eyes on it. I would suggest it's worth checking out the demo on Steam if you've got time. The other ones I can very quickly skim through. Astro Bot. That game keeps getting more content.
It does, because these kids play it. Like, the youngest absolutely loves Astro Bot.
Yeah.
And so I always let him twist my arm, and I put on the PS5 and let him, like, get sugar all over my controllers. But every time I give him the controller and we put it on, it's like, oh, here's some new stuff. No, Binky, I don't think you could do the speed. I know you're insisting on doing it anyway. Don't ask me to do. I know you're asking me to do it. But yeah, new stuff all the time.
Yeah, there was like 2 to 3 hours of new content that I hadn't seen when I jumped back in this weekend. There was a really good winter level that had all of the power-ups from all the other levels in one level. And, like, every power-up led to at least one little side area with little collectibles to find. It was a really nice little level. So just as a note for anyone who enjoys that game and hasn't jumped back into it in a while, they keep adding more stuff to it. It's worth checking out. And the last one is I started playing a game called Dawnfolk, which has been on my radar for a while. It was one of the games I showed off in the Accessibility Summer Showcase last year. It is a square grid-based city builder that is very much focused on create a small city under specific constraints for narrative purposes, move on and do another little city building project. It's not one of your, like, it's not like something like Factorio or Satisfactory where you're, like, working on your one thing that sprawls forever. This is, maybe you're dropped into a level and it's like, this one's the desert, there's very few greenery tiles, meaning that food production's going to constantly be a bit of a struggle. There's an objective on the map that's like, you got to go find these orc camps and either defeat them or befriend them, depending on whether you want to try and get your food production or army production high enough to deal with those problems. You've got a generation of light to explore more of the map, and there is this constant threat of storms of darkness coming in that you're going to have to fight against, sort of fighting back your progress exploring. And it's all just this very simple, very charming little contained sandbox of a city builder, in that it can all be played like one-handed. You can play it either with a mouse or with like WASD and just spacebar for select. You've got lots of focus on things like adjacency bonuses of certain types of buildings give you extra resources if built near certain other things. Lots of these like charming little silly minigames that are like, you can reduce the cost of building something. If you do a silly little couple of buttons minigame, you'll get some of your resources back. And I like its sort of very contained focus on... Every map you go into has like some kind of resource that's going to be hard to produce on that map as a constraint, and a very clear objective of what you're trying to accomplish by building a community here. And then, much like something like Dwarf Romantic, you can either just keep building your community after you've completed the objective, or you can just go, nope, on to the next little story thing, on to the next biome that has a unique little quirk to it I'll have to city build within the constraints of. Really charming little game. I'm very much enjoying that. So yeah, that's the main stuff I've been playing this week. Yeah. Either of you played anything else you want to chat about?
Well, I did want to hear if Steph said that they'd played Alundra.
I did go off to Stephanie's Romcondo. Alundra, yes. So I did excitedly download it during last week's Podquisition because we were talking about it. It's been a nostalgic time.
Yeah. It's antiquated.
It is very antiquated. That's the thing. It's combat especially.
It's very sluggish.
Very sluggish, and even by sort of retro Zelda standards, at least in the early goings when you've got that little piddly knife, it's so easy to take damage when you're trying to give it out, because terrible range, terrible attack rate. The first boss, the gelatinoid, the big slime that splits and splits and splits, it goes on for so long. And that's a big problem with the early goings, where it's like, these enemies don't need to be hit this many times.
No.
We also don't need a sprint button that takes a run-up animation, like a charge animation, and doesn't work if you're too many blocks near to a wall. Yeah. And you won't really know, you won't get a feel for when you can do it. Thank God, as usual, for emulators and fast-forward buttons. You know, being able to double the speed or what have you makes it a lot more bearable. It has a really nice little atmosphere still. It's got that... I've noticed this thing that PlayStation games had back in the day. A PlayStation game that is trying to offer the PlayStation's version of a Nintendo thing. It's that thing you love, but at some point a female NPC will call your character a pervert. That's it. That's the difference maker. I do like some of the weird way some of the things are written. Like, one of the early lines that used to stick in my head back in the day was when you're talking to an NPC and he asks why you've come to the village, and he's like, "What? A dream told you? You ain't one of them freak boys, are ya?" And I don't know whether that is a particular slur in that world. I've been afraid to call anyone one of them freak boys. But the phrase, for some reason, sticks in my head. And there's a lot of that. A lot of like, wow, that... Not only that, but kind of dark stuff as well. It has that... It's not edgy at all. But it does have that, hey, we've got a little more bite than Zelda in our themes.
It's trying to tell a story that's a little bit more mature in tone, right?
Yeah.
Because I just played Link's Awakening. And let's be honest, Link's Awakening and Alundra are more or less the same game thematically. Like, it is covering a lot of the same narrative ground.
As they do, yeah.
You know, those two in particular are so similar. Oh, the one town and the, weird mystery around the community. It's just that one of them is about a demon that is trying to conquer everybody through fear, and the other one is demons that want to keep everyone complacent so that they can rule over a world. Yeah. That's really it. Like, other than that, they're the same basic thing. But in Alundra, it so consistently tries to make you upset by all of the characters that you meet, and to the point where you start to feel something for someone and you're like, oh, well, shit, they're fucked next.
Yeah. And they do really fun things with that. Like, well, I say fun, No, some of them are fun. Like one of the early ones where the woman, if she falls asleep, something around her will randomly explode. They do really cute little, like, things with that. Like, it's not all, they all just have bad dreams. The characters are all affected in different ways that, like, ruin how they sleep, that have a negative impact in that way. And yeah, it talks about, like, death and madness a lot in that plot. And I'm not very far in. I'm only at, like, I want to say the second dungeon. I'm in the mines. But just the incidental NPC chatter, it's like, wow, this is not Link's Awakening in terms of tone. This is not, I wouldn't know about that. I'm just a kid. It's, her mum died and she's developing severe mental illness. Have fun! And I'm liking the tonal shift of that. And it's been so long since I properly played Alundra. I think maybe about 10 years ago, or whenever it came to, like, the PS3, I want to say. as a PS Classic, something like that.
Mhm.
And even then, I didn't get very far. And I've never beaten it. I rented it from Blockbuster way back in the day, and I got to a dungeon where I got stuck and could not work out how to progress. And it is low-key been one of my like little bucket listy things to be like, like my unfinished business list.
Mm-hmm.
Get 1 pixel further than I got in Alundra. I may do it this time. I reckon there's probably a bit... I'd have an easier time looking up solutions if I need to.
Yeah. You
So,
think, but no.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Actually.
I say that. Like, I've been playing some obscure games, and some of them really do have no information.
Yeah, I mean, and
online.
they're like, there's at least one walkthrough for Alundra, but it's, again, this is a game that is, I don't want to say it's forgotten by time, but I don't think it's been rediscovered by subsequent generations. There's been no remaster of it to encourage that. And so, like, the only guide I have found is a text-only game facts one with ASCII-based maps. And
I have that open on my phone right now.
yeah, but
Yeah.
that's the only one I know of. And there's nobody's bothered to make one with images that would show things. It's
Yeah.
all this text. It's a fascinating artifact.
As someone who's been, in the ROM condo for a few weeks now, it's like that with a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
When I was playing Sengoku Basara, trying to like get some of the harder than hard secret-y stuff in it, I'm like, wow, I found 3 guides to find these fugitive enemies, and all 3 of these guides say different conflicting things.
Yeah.
And there's no modern resource for it. Dynasty Warriors, like, there's not many places I can go if I have an issue with something like, trying to unlock a 4th or 5th weapon. And
Right.
I've met the conditions, but it's not unlocking. And I can't find it. Or like, why doesn't this item work? This seems to be a bug. Is there a fix? It's hard when you like older and less popular games, ones that haven't, as you say, been given a big revival. Those resources get lost.
Mm-hmm.
It is a shame. But hey, that's Alundra.
Well, should we do a couple of little bits of news before we wrap?
We certainly
Let's do it.
can.
We got a pair of stories that I'm going to address first quickly. Don't worry, there's a follow-up to the first one. Bobby Kotick, he wants you to know that all of those claims are for harassment and poor treatment of workers at Activision Blizzard. Not real.
Oh,
All
thank
fake.
goodness.
And he should know, as someone who once threatened to kill an assistant and is alleged to have harassed a attendant on an airplane, he knows a lot about mistreatment and abuse and harassment. So
He
he'd be
knows
the
what
expert.
constitutes it, yeah.
Yeah, well, he would like you to know that all of those legal actions taken by multiple government agencies over alleged harassment at Activision Blizzard were fake lawsuits.
Oh,
Which were planned by a union in a bid to
Jesus.
increase its membership.
wow.
Right? He also claimed that a petition signed by 1,300 Activision Blizzard employees calling for his removal as CEO was also fake, without elaborating on what bit of it was, in what way it was fake. Just, no, that 1,300 people, that's fake, that.
I mean, in fairness to Bobby Kotick, you can just say things without the need to back them up
true.
if you're a billionaire.
Apparently so. Well, we'll start by telling you the things he said without backing him up.
Yeah.
I'll give you some quotes from him. I can tell you exactly what happened. The Communication Workers of America union started looking at technology. They kept losing because they represented the News Guild, Comcast, and they realised they were losing members at a really dramatic rate. So they got to figure out how do they get new union members. So they targeted a bunch of different businesses. Google, some other tech companies, Tesla, SpaceX, and us. It's the power of the unions. I didn't really understand this until we went through the process. They were able to get a government agency, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and a state employment agency called the Department of Fair Employment and Housing to file fake lawsuits against us and Riot Games. Sorry, he also thinks the lawsuits against Riot Games were fake.
Oh, okay.
Making allegations about the workplace that didn't weren't true, but they were able to do it.
So, just a point of distinction. The lawsuits are real.
Yeah, they're not fake. If the lawsuits, we all have the evidence of the lawsuits' existence.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can believe information as verified from someone who doesn't know what the word fake means.
Yeah, so before I continue this, I do want to remind you some key facts about both Activision Blizzard and Riot. So, that Riot lawsuit he was referring to, Riot Games agreed to a $100 million settlement over that lawsuit for gender discrimination in pay and promotion, sexual harassment, and retaliation against women.
Mm-hmm.
So that one that he says was fake, $100 million settlement.
And it's a hell of an allegation to say that a lawsuit that's settled for that amount, to accuse the people who filed it, essentially of lying and taking that money under false pretenses. That's a hell of an allegation.
It sounds like defamation.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? Well, I got to while we're on it, we've got to remind you about Activision Blizzard. You know what the result of their the EEOC's investigation was? Activision Blizzard set aside $18 million for employees who'd experienced harassment and discrimination at the country. Then they settled with the...
You said country instead of company, and while I can understand that distinction is becoming very blurry these days.
Long day.
Yep.
And then a year later, the DEFH lawsuit, they settled for $54.8 million. So keep that in mind.
So Bobbers believes so strongly in this the fakeness of the lawsuits that his company shelled that money out.
We're not even done with this
until he went through the union process. He didn't really know what the problem was then.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, he was so naive.
Yeah, so let's continue his quote with that addressed. Oh, they're so clever. They realised that would be a benefit, would be a thing that they could come into a company because we pay well, we have great benefits, great working environment, and they could say, hey, the culture's bad, people are harassed, or they get retaliated against, or there's discrimination. They came up with this plan, they hired a PR firm, and they started attacking our company. They got these two agencies to file these lawsuits to claim there was some sexual harassment. We didn't have any of that. Ultimately, they had to admit that this was not truthful and withdraw the complaints.
Is he accusing them of salting? And follow-up question, white-collar salting?
Yeah.
It seems like it.
Here's the thing. He sounds like he's lying.
Right?
Like, you know when someone lies by saying too many words? They're saying too much, and it sounds like they're telling a story rather than giving you facts. Little things like they're so clever. And then adding in, oh, we've got such great benefits. Like, just that little, he sounds like the guy that was like, I tell you what, right? They were going to hire me as a stuntman for Lethal Weapon, but they said I was too good. I made Mel Gibson look bad. Like, that's what he sounds like.
Well, see, I've got one more bit of quote that I think you're going to want to hear, which is the bit where Kotick is going to insist to you that he's actually the hero, because no sexual harassment went on at the company. But when it did, he was the hero that stopped it.
Oh.
Like, it never happened, but when it did happen, he stopped it. Right. When I heard about things that were inappropriate conduct in the workplace, I just fired people, like, on the spot. My view is you don't want to have a culture where there was any kind of discrimination, retaliation, misconduct. It's bad for recruiting, and it's bad for retention.
Okay, why is he still there, then? Why is the man that... And again... This isn't an allegation from me. Activision, PR, admitted this happened. He left an answer message on someone's machine, on his assistant's machine, saying he was going to have her killed. If he's got this zero-tolerance policy, why is the cunt still there? Why hasn't he fired himself? Odious, nasty little creature.
My takeaway from that last quote was, it's bad for recruiting and it's bad for retention. It's also fucking bad for the people who go through it.
Yeah.
No, he doesn't care about them.
Yeah, I'm like, it's really telling that even when you're trying to paint yourself as the hero, you don't at any point go, it's bad for the human beings that work at our company, you know?
I think I know why he's saying that. And I might be giving him too much credit. But again, if I'm looking at this from the perspective of someone who's trying too hard to lie, I think he's trying to make himself sound more credible by saying, even if I wanted to protect abusers, it would make no business sense. I think that's what he's trying to do. He's trying to say, look, there's not even any benefit to me, like on a personal level, let alone doing the right thing. I think it's part of the overclocking the lie that he's doing. And I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. And I've got no problem saying this. He's a liar and he's lying. And if he ever tried to file a slander lawsuit for that, it would be fake.
Well, you know, we don't have to say that he's lying because we have a follow-up news story in which a lot of people working either currently or formerly for Activision Blizzard are saying he's lying, unsurprisingly. So we can start with A Better ABK, which was one of the groups that was, you know, leading the spearhead against the bullshit going on, have stated, the executives of our company did not protect us and often made the situation worse or directly perpetuated the harm. Our unions were born from the very real and harmful way executives reacted when made aware of these situations. The trauma, discrimination, and abuse our co-workers and former co-workers endured is not fake or a plan to drive union membership. All very true. There is a lot of people who have spoken up in the time since this, particularly a lot of people who signed that petition to get him fired as CEO, going, hello, I'm one of the people who signed it. It's not fake. I signed it because I wanted him gone as CEO and I worked at the company. The thing that the petition purports to be, clearly not fake. Here is all of us putting our hands up and saying, yeah, that was us. There's a bunch of threads. There's one from Valentine Powell, who led several of the employee walkouts, talking about their perspective on things. Basically, a lot of fucking Activision Blizzard people have come forward to go, no, Bobby, it was real. We went through it.
Yeah.
We wanted you gone. That's not fake.
One of the cruelest things you can do to a victim of abuse is deny their reality.
Yeah.
Is to say it's made up, to say it's fake, to say there's an ulterior motive for speaking up. It is one of the most abjectly cruel things you can do. And there is a reason why, even if they want to mouth off the way Kotick did, executives at companies keep their fucking mouths shut when this kind of thing happens. If they don't just give you some boilerplate, we take it very seriously. I don't know why I sounded like Mopper-Top for that, but, you know.
Because Elon Musk sounds like that.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's another thing. I can't help but notice his overuse of the word fake. I can't help but notice his use of his name-dropping of Tesla. All these billionaires are all in it together.
Yeah.
They're all connected and they're all doing each other's favours. They were all on a certain island, let's be honest. And I really do worry that, you know, having seen their friend get away with Heiling the Führer a few weeks ago, nasty little men like Kotick are only going to get more emboldened.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Like, they already felt they were above the law, but I think now they think they're above the law of public opinion. It doesn't matter anymore to them. They are as gods.
I want to read a bit from Powell's comment, just because I think it's important to respond to one of Kotick's specific claims, which was that this was driven by the CWA union and that they drummed up and invented things to be upset about at the company, and that it was not a grassroots workers being upset with their conditions. So I'm going to read a little bit here. This was years before unionization was ever discussed. We gathered a list of about 50 ways people wanted to improve salary and promotions and refined that list down to 10 bullet points with the help of over 100 employees across Blizzard. We presented our list and were told by leadership no. We didn't discuss unionization as a team until months after our first walkouts. We wanted to try to bring light to what was happening and try to fix it ourselves if we could. The first 2 walkouts were entirely employee-run. It was terrifying, amazing, and beautiful. After a couple of months of us being loud, Activision Blizzard stopped being nice about it, especially Kotick. I was the one who started the petition to remove Bobby Kotick as CEO. I was the first name on the list, and that petition had nothing to do with the CWA. Bobby Kotick is trying to paint a false narrative, but it's unsurprising. He refused to listen to us for years when we tried to handle this stuff without unionization, and only listened once we actually started unionizing.
It's the only way they ever do.
Yeah, it is not that the CWA came in and convinced people to make up things that they should be upset about. People were upset about shit, the company did not listen, so they went and unionized to get them to listen.
Yeah, because companies don't do things because it's the right thing to do. They do things because they're forced. It was Conrad that introduced me years ago to the term regulations are written in blood. They don't do something until something happens that forces their hand. And one of the great frustrations I have had over the past, let's say, 5 years, analysing and criticising the game industry, is I've watched time and time again publishers and executives get upset that unionisation is happening when they had the power to stop this.
Yep.
With a little bit
did.
of kindness, a little bit of decency, a little inclination to do the right thing, or at least the long-term self-serving thing. They could have stopped unionization by making unionization obsolete, because if they did the right thing, we wouldn't need unions.
They don't even have to give much in a lot of circumstances to keep people happy enough to not go after what they actually deserve. But they won't even do that.
And most people don't want much. You know, they want to paint unions as greedy and entitled. And it's like, only from the perspective of someone who's greedy and entitled is that true most of the time. Because most people just, they don't want to be unable to afford to eat in the company cafeteria when their boss is making millions of dollars a week. That's all they want.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
People are not asking to be as rich as Bobby. I wouldn't want to be. A lot of people wouldn't want to be that, have an existence that fucking meaningless. People want enough money to be able to live and be happy, to have a roof over their head, to look after their family. And if you think that's greedy, what a monster you are. What a fucking monster you are. Especially when you are judging that avarice atop a mountain of gold that you are hoarding like a dragon. Because that's what executives are. I've said it before. They are dragons on a pile of gold. They're not spending that money. They will never use it or need it. They want it. That is great.
Yeah.
Normal people want their needs met. And that's not a want. That's their needs. And companies will do everything they can to pay them under the odds, to take more than they give. And when it's something as simple as fire the rapist, and that's too much for them, then unionization is the nicest thing that could happen to them.
Mm-hmm. I think that's probably... We've got other stories we could talk about. I think that's probably a good place to leave it this week.
Yeah, I think that's a good end.
We've had a little shout at Bobby. I think that's a good wrapping point.
Yeah, bit of a shout at Bobby. Unlike Bobby Kotick, Laura, you work.
I do.
You have a job.
I do,
and you're good at it, and you earn money. To
sometimes I have money for it.
When you're not being dicked by companies as well. Can you tell us about that work and where people can pay you?
If you want to support the work that I do, you can do so over at patreon.com/LauraKBuzz. As little as $1 a month over there really does allow me to keep doing the stuff I do. By the time you hear this, the first episode of Abletop is going to be up over on youtube.com/LauraKBuzz. This is a 6-part series of roughly hour-long videos about board game and tabletop gaming accessibility. I've been working on these for several weeks with Carrier Waterton, who does absolutely fantastic work in the accessibility space. Tune in every Wednesday, 5 p.m. UK, for roughly an hour of discussion. Our first episode that will be up by the time you hear this is talking about rule books and accessibility around learning a board game for the first time. If you don't want to listen to an hour's worth of conversation, you can check the video description for quick points, where we just have our bullet-pointed takeaways, so you don't need to take notes. You can just get, like, the key highlights. We've got all the little timestamps, so if you just want to learn, for example, about how to play video accessibility, or player strategy guides, or learning asymmetrical games, you can go and just jump to that little section and learn about accessibility for that bit.
That's very accessible.
I'm very fucking proud of this series me and Carrie have put together. I think it's really fucking cool. Go check out the first episode of Abletop. There's another 5 episodes coming in the next 5 weeks. So check that out. What about you, Conrad? Where are you out on the internet?
Oh, you can find me at Conrad Zimmerman on Blue Sky, and you can hang out with me on Twitch at twitch.tv/thatconradzimmerman. I'm on Sundays, Mondays, and Tuesdays playing Spelunky, and it's a bunch of new people showing up. It's been great. Come by. It's fun. You can buy anti-capitalist propaganda and Jimquisition merchandise at mercenarycreative.com. We've got a new anti-AI design on shirts right now. Zilla did it. It's fucking great.
Oh, is that the plagiarism one?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I asked for a design with that kind of idea, and Zilla, as Zilla does, knocked it out the park.
Absolutely. And so that's all over at mercenarycreative.com. And everything I do online gets supported through Patreon at patreon.com/fistshark. And you know who else has a Patreon? Stephanie Sterling.
That is correct. Patreon.com/Jimquisition, which supports this podcast and the video series and the reviews on thejimquisition.com. There's a Dynasty Warriors Abyss review up on the site right now. Do feel free to check that out. I also live stream Twitch TV/Jim Sterling, which I really do want to get around to changing to Commander Sterling sometime soon. But it's Jim Sterling for now. My wrestling's a bit quiet for me. It tends to be this time of year. I will definitely be back in Manchester in April, though, because I will be starting doing very regular Manchester shows with Pinfall Pro, by all accounts. So look forward to that. Other than that, we got Quantum Witch coming in the summer, and I've been working really hard on my part of that game. It's got a wish list on Steam and a demo, so check that out, Quantum Witch. And there is also a wish list or rather, you can put on your Steam wish list Date Everything, which will also be out this summer. As I found out on this very show when I was saying it was out on the 14th. Date Everything, another game I have worked on, and I'm very proud of my part in it. So yeah, that's all that. Thank you all so much for listening, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.